Let's move on. So we've taken care of the viscous forces, we have taken care of the gravity. Let's talk about the pressure. So I'll squeeze in the pressure here, and we'll look at the forces due to pressure. Maybe I should do it the other way as we have done before. Inertia divided by pressure, just to maintain the parity. So inertial forces compared with pressure forces. And therefore I should look at rho u square by L divided by P by L. So I would get rho u square by uppercase P. And that actually, there is a name for it, that's the Euler number. Okay. So if my Euler number is large, that means my inertial forces dominate. But if my inertial number is small, then of course I would have to account for the pressure forces. Now we made a remark last time, okay, that for incompressible flows, P itself does not matter. Okay, it is the gradient of pressure which matters. So really speaking, we were able to argue last time when we derived the non-dimensional form which I showed earlier in the class, that capital P could be taken as the dynamic pressure, okay, rho capital U square. And if you did that, then of course that automatically eliminates the Euler number, because then Euler number is unity. Okay, but so that's the regular incompressible flow. Sometimes what happens, that pressure itself may become important. So let's take the example of let's say a propeller spinning in water. Okay, maybe it's attached to a boat, and then if my pressure is changing across the propeller, and at some point it becomes very small, smaller than the vapor pressure, then some of the water may actually convert to water vapor and I may get bubbles, and those bubbles then may have implications on the erosion of the propeller blades or on the flow itself. So that's when I would have to worry about the Euler number. So in most flows that we will encounter in this class, we don't have to worry about the Euler number. But suppose you are interested in phenomena like cavitation or maybe some other aspects, then you would have to worry about Euler number. Okay, so we have taken care of this as well, and now I want to talk about the unsteady one. So now I want to talk about the fourth aspect, which is what about the ratio of the unsteady terms, is that important? So unsteady forces now I would like to look at the last set of terms, which is essentially the unsteady term with respect to the inertial terms. So I would like to look at the inertia terms, but the steady ones, and they are, how are they with respect to the unsteady terms. And that number I could get it as follows. So rho u square by L divided by rho u by T. So I could cancel out the rho's, u's go away, and I would get u T by L. So recall T was some kind of time scale. Now imagine if I had a periodic flow or a time periodic flow. So I could think of flow in my lungs or the flow inside a heart. Okay, so my lungs are moving at a certain frequency. There is a certain time period. Similarly, my heart has a certain frequency, it is beating. So T, suppose, is the time period. So that's the characteristic time of a certain floor. And I could then talk about a frequency. Okay? So please don't confuse this F with the body force. So maybe I should write here Fr, that it's the frequency. So Fr is the frequency, and this is given as 1 over T. And then I could look at this number as U over L Fr. This is usually referred to as 1 over St. So St is the Strouhal number, which is defined as Fr, the frequency, times the L times the characteristic speed u. And this gives me some idea of how important the unsteadiness is. This is an extremely important number, and let me try to show you what kind of information we can generate out of this. So if you recollect, the first session that we had, I introduced you to flow past a circular cylinder. A circular cylinder kept in a uniform stream U. And what we noticed is that beyond a certain Reynolds number, you start getting vortex shedding. The vortices that are shed, they have a certain frequency. So if I put a probe here and I take a watch, then I could ask myself, what is the time interval between the vortices that cross by? So I get one vortex that crosses, then the next one, and another one, and so on. So that's the time period, and I could also use that to estimate the frequency. Now what I could do is draw a diagram of what is the frequency with speed. So I could put this circular cylinder inside a wind tunnel and run experiments at different speeds, and then check what is the frequency. What people have found is that you get a graph like this. Okay? So it is kind of linearly increasing with speed. What that means is that as the flow becomes faster, then these vortices start getting released at a faster rate, and therefore it leads to higher frequency. What if I non-dimensionalize this? And what people have found is that if I non-dimensionalize these quantities, so instead of Fr, I actually plot the Strouhal number, which is Fr times L is the diameter and u is the speed. So this is the diameter. Of the cylinder. So I could use this on the y-axis, and on the x-axis I could use the Reynolds number, and Reynolds number is u d times rho and mu. So if I am doing experiments in a wind tunnel, rho is the density of the air, it is given, it's a constant. D is the diameter of the cylinder, again that's for a given cylinder, it's a constant. Mu is the coefficient of viscosity of air, again that's constant. So the x-axis, I could either call it a speed, or I could non-dimensionalize it and plot Reynolds number on the x-axis. And then magically this graph actually becomes almost constant, and this value is nearly 0.2. Okay, so that's the power of non-dimensionalization. Okay, so I hope I have been able to convey to you that if we look at the full equations, the full Navier-Stokes equations, which are written over here in the non-dimensional form, then I can try to get a hang of what is the weightage of different forces compared to inertial forces. So inertial to viscous is Reynolds, inertial to gravity is for the Froude number, inertial to pressure is the Euler number, and then of course the unsteady terms, whether they are important or not, that would be determined by the Strouhal number. Okay, so now we wish to talk about modeling the flows. Okay. So the way I would like to motivate is the following. Let's say I have an aircraft, okay, and I want to estimate what would be the performance of a certain prototype, the real aircraft, versus the performance that I get from a scaled model of it. So there is a scaled model, and there is a prototype. And I want to understand what is the relationship between them. So I measure, for example, the drag on a model of an aircraft. What can I say about the drag that a real aircraft in full scale and at the relevant speeds, what is the drag it would actually experience? I could also ask another question, that I have an aircraft, a prototype that was, let's say, of a certain length, maybe 10 meters, and it was supposed to fly at 100 meters per second at 30,000 feet. And if I make a scale model, which is maybe only 1 meter, okay, so 1/10 scale model, what speed should I test it at so that I can draw a similarity between the two? So that's the idea of modeling, that how do I model a real life situation in a laboratory, or if I want to do an analysis, what are the things that I can neglect, what are the things that I should not neglect, how do I make those decisions? So we have the concept of a scale model and a prototype. So the first thing we want to talk about is geometric similarity. For us to do any modeling, the prototype and the scale models must be geometrically similar. That means all lengths are scaled by the same factor, all angles are preserved, and of course the shape is preserved. Okay. So the first important thing is that I must have a geometrically similar model. Now this poses some challenges. Suppose I am interested in doing an experiment on, let's say, a railway wagon. Okay. So as you know, a railway wagon is several meters long, a coach of maybe a certain express train. And I want to do a wind tunnel test of a model which is 1/100th the scale of the real coach. So I make a tiny model to put it inside a wind tunnel. If I look at the steps, the grills, okay, the footpath that carries me inside the cabin, the door handles, they would also become 1/100th the size. So a coach that was very long versus a model that is short, all these artifacts would now look like small matchsticks, and it would become very difficult for me sometimes even to incorporate them in my model. Okay. So when I fabricate a model which is similar to a prototype, these are some of the challenges that I will face. So the scale has to be appropriately chosen. Okay. The second is the dynamic similarity. So for geometrically similar models, the pi's, if they are identical, that implies dynamic similarity. Okay. So what it means is, if you recollect, in an earlier class we argued that CD is a function of Reynolds number. For the very special case where we did not have body forces, we did not have effect of altitude or the compressibility, it's an incompressible flow, there are no free surfaces, then we argued that we could make two non-dimensional parameters, the two pi's. Okay, one is the drag coefficient and the other is the Reynolds number. So dynamic similarity therefore means that if we have a dynamically similar flow, then all the pi's are identical. What that actually means is, if I take two geometrically similar flows and I am able to ensure that Reynolds number for the two are identical, then it guarantees that the CD for the two models are also identical. Okay? And I know how CD is defined, that's basically the non-dimensional drag. Okay? So I can then argue the following, that if I had the scale model, which let us say I call M, and the prototype if I call P, then the dynamic similarity says that RE model should be equal to RE prototype, and if I do that, then this will imply that CD model will be equal to CD prototype. Okay, so let me review what we have done today, and then we will begin more discussions in the next class. So we began today by reviewing the incompressible flow equations and the boundary conditions, wherein we showed that Reynolds number is an important parameter. And then we took the full blown equation with the unsteady terms, the pressure terms, the body forces, and we were able to show that if you write that in a non-dimensional form, then the relative importance of the various terms can actually be shown by certain non-dimensional numbers, such as the Reynolds number, Euler number, the Froude number, the Strouhal number. And if we ensure the similarity in terms of geometry and in terms of these various non-dimensional numbers, then we are guaranteed dynamic similarity. And we will use this for modeling. We will look at this through certain examples in the next class. Thank you.